Joined right now by owner of Keller Williams in Franklin, Brian Hickox. Thanks for stopping by, Brian.
Dave, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You have 3+ decades in the real estate world right here in the greater Boston area. Interesting time right now. What are you seeing in the market?
Well, you know, it's a very opportunistic time as we look at real estate interest rates and the housing opportunities that sellers have. Prices are up, so sellers are benefiting, but at the same time with these low interest rates, the buyers are able to take advantage of some low payments even though the equity for the sellers has increased.
I like to hear you say low interest rates because they are low. Coming from the lending side, people are so sensitive these days and they're hearing low to mid 4s and thinking that the sky is falling because they're not in the 3s.
Well, that's so true. You know, as we look at the average interest rate for mortgages over the past 40 years, it's 8.64%. Now, if we said 8.64% to a young buyer today, they might stop their search immediately.
They'd drop to a full, they wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, it's
throw them
so
into
true.
a tizzy.
Now, there's no doubt that interest rates have been suppressed, you know, with the Federal Reserve trying to keep the economy moving forward. Well, what we've seen is that these have been artificially suppressed over a period of time. I remember sitting at the dinner table with my dad so many years ago when he talked about buying his home in the 1950s, and that was the good old days of 4% interest. Well, you know, we saw them go all the way up to, in 1980, some 18 to 21%, and people still bought properties. Sure. So even though these interest rates are on the move upward, we are still going to see quite a bit of activity going forward in terms of purchasing. However, the shock to the system is a little bit tough for some buyers who haven't had that history of higher interest rates.
And for those buyers or sellers that were thinking about moving, let's say 12 months from now, I think a few of those people are jumping off the fence and realizing right now is a great time to do it.
Well, it's true. You know, right now the sellers are taking advantage of higher prices and buyers taking advantage of low interest rates. So it really is that win-win scenario that we're encountering currently. As we've seen 1 year ago to 1 year today, we're seeing about 1 full interest rate point increase. We're probably going to see another point over the next 12 months. Now that news is starting to make it out there to the public. And so what we're starting to see is folks who are looking to buy, say, some 12 months from now, are looking to accelerate that timeline. And that's putting a little excess buyer demand on. And you'll see low inventory levels because of that, because many people are buying properties currently. And as we get into the spring market, we'll start to see some more inventory hit. But I really believe that we're borrowing some future buyers from, say, a year, year and a half from now into today's market.
For that average buyer, let's just call it looking to borrow $400,000. I mean, it really can impact you. I agree that we're going to probably see a point higher a year from now with interest rates, and it can impact you, you know, $250, $300 a month, which is a lot of money.
Well, let's just look at it from a dollar purchase power. One interest rate point, 1 full point, has a profound difference in the amount someone can buy. For example, you talk about a $400,000 mortgage. If someone has a payment at $400,000 today and the rate goes up 1 point, 12 months from now, they could only borrow $360,000, 10% less to have the same monthly payment.
It's a big difference.
Absolutely. And that's not a win-win scenario when the buyer has to have more of their payment go towards interest rather than towards paying down their principal. And when we think about principal, isn't that really the price for a home seller? So currently, more of a buyer's payment can go towards price and satisfy a seller with a higher sale price.
That's why I'm sure when you come across those buyers out there that say, I'm going to wait for things to level off. That's not necessarily the mindset to have right now. Even though prices are going up, interest rates are going up as well.
That's right. We're in the good old days of interest rates right now. So it's time to select a home, lock in an interest rate, and enjoy the property.
Now let's talk about homes. You're in a great market out in the Franklin area. Keller Williams office, you have well over 100 agents, I think you said.
That's right.
What is driving people to Franklin?
Well, you know, it's one of those, it's the perfect balance. You know, sometimes we get out of balance a little bit, meaning that we want to be right downtown next to where we work. Well, we're going to pay a prohibitive price for that. And at other times, we want the biggest house possible, and now our commute goes to some 2 hours, and we're losing that family time, perhaps. Well, you know, what we find is Goldilocks is in Franklin.
And that's right. You guys are known sometimes as the Goldilocks town?
Well, in coining that term, it's more of the perfect balance of size of property for the price without that commute going too far, and at the same time having superior schools. You put that all together with great demographics and great commute options, and that's why so many people are treasuring the greater Franklin area.
And I think a lot of people don't realize, yes, it might be, 1, 2, 3 exits down. However, when the traffic hits, right? I'm sure you.
Well, it's so true.
You guys are not that far off where it really gets jammed up.
Well, it's funny that you say that because we have a lot of people who are relocating into our area. And as we see people coming here, whether it's for family reasons or for job purposes, we see them say, we're working downtown, but I want to raise my family in a suburban environment. I want that neighborhood rather than the city environment for my young children. We're looking for good schools, and we're coming, let's say, for example, from upstate New York, where prices may be a little bit lower, and they say, we found this great town called Wellesley. Well, certainly that's a great community close to Boston, yet can be in a suburban environment where they can raise their children and have great schools. At the same time, they find the pricing is prohibitive. Well, to be right along the 128 corridor, that's going to put them out of their budget oftentimes. What we see is then we continue to move outward a little bit, town by town, and we see that Franklin has become one of those great stopping points. Not too far on the commute. As we think about Route 128, that's where the traffic in the morning really starts to back up. So the amount of time on the commute into Boston is mostly from 128 in. As we look at the distance or time, really from 495 to 128, that's a much, much easier commute, that segment. So time-wise, we're really not sacrificing all that much to get so much more in terms of the size of the property, the size of the dwelling itself, still maintaining great schools, very low taxes. By the way, over the past 5 years, Franklin taxes haven't even gone up 2% in the tax rate.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So
that's a big deal.
Now, property values have increased, of course,
yeah.
But at the same time, we're seeing the taxes being very, very attractive for most homeowners because Franklin has this, again, a balance of business and industry to shoulder the tax burden from not just to be on the backs of the residential consumer.
I think for a lot of potential buyers that are looking in those W towns or in around the 128 belt, they think that they want to be there. It is crazy how the prices have risen. Some of those towns, it's tough to get in for under $1 million. I can't believe we can even say that, but it's real. From an affordability factor, what can you get into Franklin for price point wise?
Well, as we see right now, we're just looking at the results of the first quarter 2018 as compared to 17 and 16. And pricing has escalated from 16 to 17. We're up 4% in value and 11% this year over last year, same period, January through the end of March. Well, that tells us something that people are treasuring the area. They want to be there. Inventory levels, although not as tight as closer into Boston, are still on the tight side. But the savvy home seller right now is putting their property on the market now in this earlier spring market, meaning the March, early April timeframe, because the demand we've seen continues through the winter and into the spring, while the supply of houses is very low because many homeowners are looking for that beautiful spring. The daffodils are blooming, the grass is green, the pool is open, all those things to attract a buyer, while at the same time, many other people are flooding the market with their inventory of their home as well. So the savvy home buyers oftentimes grab the earlier spring, home sellers, are usually grabbing the earlier spring market rather than the later one, which has some more inventory that comes aboard.
And inventory has been so low, I feel like for so long, that those buyers that are out there who have lost out on 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 more homes, they're ready to go. Forget the daffodils. I want to see the inside of the house. I can picture the flowers popping. Let's go.
Well,
right?
there's no doubt that locking in interest rates may be one motivation to buy sooner rather than later. We've just talked about that. But even though inventory levels are not super tight in the Franklin market right now, we're still seeing multiple offers on a majority of properties. So that demand is very, very much there. We're certainly looking for some more supply, so we're happy to put more sellers' properties on the market. And as we look at these multiple offers, it's interesting. A number of years ago when we shifted from 2007 to 2009, we saw that some houses would be on the market for, well, the average time was over 6 months. Well, right now we're not even 30 days, even in the quarter that's the slowest of the year. So as we get into the full spring market, these are multiple offers on the first days.
Great time to do it. Brian, thank you for stopping by.
A pleasure, Dave.
And if you're looking to move or sell in the greater Franklin area and would like to connect with Brian and his team over at Keller Williams, check out brianhickox.com. Remember, we have more market updates just like this one right here on Boston.com.